Thank you for watching another episode of the Media Society. I'm your host, Anthony Mitchell, and as always, we can't do this without you. Please subscribe, share, you know, hang out with us. We're always on our audio portion. It happens every week on Revolver Networks, on all podcast platforms, and usually a month or so after we release the video for all of our audio shows. Tonight's guest is special. We're deviating from the politics and the societal awareness that we normally have. We want to actually go dive into a person's life. You know, human life is super important to us. And tonight's episode is called Breaking Barriers, Amy Taylor's Journey. Tonight, I want to welcome you back to another episode of the Media Society. Tonight we have a guest who has truly crafted a unique and inspiring life, Miss Amy Taylor. She's a fashion model, pilot, luxury companion, and successful entrepreneur. In today's episode, we're going to focus on Amy's journey, the challenges that she's faced, and how she wants to inspire women to embrace their power, authenticity, and independence. Amy, it's a pleasure to have you with us tonight. How are you?
I'm fine. Well, thank you for that overly complimentary intro. I've certainly made a lot of choices, some of them good, some of them bad, but thanks for humanizing somebody from my world. I appreciate it.
You are a friend of the Media Society, and anybody that comes on, we appreciate the time that they've taken to sit with me and my brother. So, Amy, your life seems to be a collection of extraordinary accomplishments, but I know that success often comes at a cost. Could you tell us about the sacrifices you've had to make along the way? And tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Amy Taylor. I live in New York City now. I lived in Los Angeles for a quarter century after graduate school. Both of those have been fun. A well-lived life is lived in lots of places, and I've been kind of a hyphenator throughout life. I've turned things I loved into careers. I think I've pivoted when it turned out I didn't love something as much as I hoped I would, or I wasn't as good at it as I wanted to be, or I think I was just too stupid to take no for an answer in life. Uh, and that kind of healthy delusion has led to a life that's, if nothing else, it's not been boring. But you're correct, Anthony. As you so wisely said, nothing comes without a cost, and no one has it all. And I love the life I have, but for sure, pursuing lots of different things. I've worked very hard, chased work that did come at the cost of some personal relationships. I am not a wife. I'm not a mother. That wasn't because I hated the idea of doing so. Next lifetime, I'll join that sorority and be part of that stuff. And my sister's got kids, so I'm the cliche aunt in New York City. And honestly, it's a
Awesome.
vibe. It's fine. But achieving success in a variety of endeavors has come at the cost of maybe as much downtime and relaxation as I would have liked to have. There's been long hours, frequent travel. There's been a lot of times getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning to make a 5 a.m. wheels up. Um, I think I would have had a hard time being a good wife and a mother. I don't know. Maybe I would have made it work. My sister does. She has a business and is successful and as a wife and as a mom.
Mhm.
And I remain in awe of her. But for me, it did kind of cost a lot in romantic relationships. The more traditional gender roles that I saw our mother do and that I would have also probably loved was not the way I went. Um, and like I said, next lifetime. I think sometimes it can be isolating. I spent a lot of Friday nights working, either in school or on my jobs. When other people were going out, I was working. I stopped at one drink so that I could get up in the next morning and didn't have as much fun getting drunk in Vegas with friends as people did in their 20s.
Mhm.
I was nerdier to achieve success. I'm not sorry for it. It paid off, but there was sometimes a distance between me and peers because they didn't share those same priorities or that same trajectory as I always did. And I'm not faulting them for their choices. They probably had more fun than I sometimes did. And then in other times in my career where I chased a lot of fun, my career or school at the whatever was going on at the time sometimes suffered. So it's very hard to do all things well. It's and trust me, I've outsourced as much as I can. I do not cook, I do not clean. I would love to, but I've done as much as I can to buy myself time, but it's still tough.
Mhm.
Um, I think physical health, I've remained fit. I had to as a model, so it was kind of a non-negotiable to like stay healthy. Your skin, your hair, your body shape, all that has to be good, or there's no work.
Mhm.
But mental health can struggle. Like when you're working really hard, there is burnout, there is frustration. You have to have good therapists, you have to have good friends, people you can vent to. I'm sure I put too much off on my beloved sister, but I take it from her too, because she's kind of also a career powerhouse. So the mental health thing is hard. There is stress and anxiety. The Great Recession was brutal on anybody who was self-employed. We all went broke, and then it crawled back. And COVID was tough too. And the more you live through the more weathered you get, and the more you're like, oh, I can face these cycles again.
Yeah.
But it's never that easy on your mental health to be a hard charging person who wants to chase success. And a lot of people sacrifice their health. I definitely try not to. I try to carve out plenty of time for sleep and exercise because I know how important they are.
Mhm.
But sometimes they get pushed to the side when I have to work or have to travel. Um, there again is, of course, the double standards of gender bias, the traits that are attributed to men as assets, um, confidence, aggressive business behavior, ambition are sometimes not adored in women.
True.
They can scare men or even make them hate you and think you're some kind of a witch or a bitch or both. Uh, Bossy, all that stuff. But that's changing fast now. The younger generation is better than mine was about these things. I don't think younger men hate women who want to be partners rather than servants.
True.
And traditional women can still be traditional. No one's mad at that either. So I like that there's more choice available for everyone in terms of what kind of lifestyle they want to live, what kind of relationships they have. But when I was born, I'm over 40. And when I was young, you didn't see a lot of career type women. That was very much an anomaly. And so I've had the world wonder about me. And I still get asked every single day, like, are you lonely? Are you sad that you have this life? And the answer is no, I'm fine. uh, there can be a pressure to excel when you've gambled that much. Like if you failed, that, oh my God, you wouldn't have been away for a mom, and then you also wouldn't have been successful. And how terrible would that be?
Mhm.
So there can be kind of this tokenism, like you feel the weight of all women on you as the token, and you must succeed for them. And that kind of pressure can be tough. I
Mhm.
think sometimes African Americans can feel that tokenism too, right?
That's true.
You
Let
know what that's like when you're successful and people are like, oh, you're responsible for the situations of everyone in your same race or sex, or it's weird, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And that can breed like the imposter syndrome and self-doubt of like,
Mhm.
should I even do this? Should I even dare to try? Why do I have such audacity to try to be different from the norm that's expected of me, to just get in line and be quiet and behave? Uh,
Let me ask you this though. What When you think about everything that you just said, what or who is Amy Taylor?
my mast in the wind has been freedom. I chased whatever I thought would leave the most doors open to me. My father said that. He said, don't make decisions that close doors for you. So, like, don't do drugs because that'll fry your brain and then you'll be dumb and then you won't have as many doors open to you because you'll be stupid
Mhm.
because you'll lose brain. So I knew not to do that. And then don't commit felonies because you'll have a lot of doors closed to you. Whether that's fair or not, or should be or not, is a different subject. But
True.
the fact is, so I certainly made mistakes and did things that did close some doors. But my mast in the wind, who I am, is a person who always tried to leave doors open because I wanted freedom, not freedom to be an idiot, freedom to choose for me where I want to live, what I want to do for money, who I want to be friends with.
Mhm.
I wanted freedom. I wanted to live a full expression of a human soul's life, like I saw other people get to live.
Hmm.
And I didn't think that women of my generation, I was born in the end of the 70s, women were able to be wives, mothers, or maybe some like barely, tiny part-time wage secretary job that wasn't enough to survive on without a man.
Exactly.
When I was born, women couldn't get a credit card or a loan without a male cosigner.
Hmm.
That was the law in America.
Yeah.
And it was the only women who ever had their own money was through their father or husband. No, there were no there were no women with freedom,
That's true.
real freedom. And so I saw some things when I was young that I'm sure shaped me too much. My mother, uh, I saw her not get to live all of her dreams. She made her choices, and she's basically a happy woman. But I did see her not have as full a life as she wanted because of kids and marriage, and I guess that made me who I am as somebody who didn't want doors closed without me closing them. It was my choice, right?
Hmm.
So,
Well,
control freak, I guess, is who I am. I don't know what happened.
hey, I like it. I like it. That's well said. So I might even start asking everybody that question, but I like that. I like your response. Let me ask you this. How did you balance? First of all, tell people how you became a pilot.
Oh, well, so my grandpa was a pilot, so it's probably in the blood.
Okay.
The first time I took a discovery flight as a teenager, I was like, "Oh, this is for me."
Hmm.
And not everybody feels that way. Some people try it out and they're like, "Oh, this I do not like this at all." But I did. I and still every single time we rotate off the runway, I can't believe it's real.
Hmm.
For me, it's a freaking miracle. And we've only had it for 100 years or so, 120ish, on the backs of a lot of insane people in the best way
Hmm.
who died to give us this thing that you can be anywhere in the world in a day now.
Yep.
If you wanted to come from DC to New York, that was like a once in your lifetime journey, and a bunch of your family died and you never went back.
Good point.
And now you want to go to Dubai, you can be there in a half a day
Yeah.
with a little bit of cash. So I I think it was in my blood somehow. My grandpa was into that. He was Air Force and then in business.
Hmm.
And I loved it as a hobby. It is a ludicrously expensive hobby. If you want to fly like pretty big, pretty fast stuff like turbine jets, you kind of need like a spare $1 million a year to waste. And I'm not that rich. So I knew that I was going to have to fly for at least part time for a living to get someone else to foot the bill so that I could fly faster stuff than like just your Cessna 172s and things like
Gotcha.
that.
Yeah.
I've flown a million single pistons and multis, and that's fun, but they're slow and they're, tiny. And so during the Great Recession, when there was nothing to do, 2008, 2009, 2010,
Hmm.
there was no money to be made. There was no business to be done. Everybody was kind of just on hold. And I added a bunch of other tickets, my instructor licenses, my multis, my
Wow.
instrument, it's a bunch of licenses that you can do more with. So I went to Arizona and did that, and then I taught, and then I flew cargo, and I've done cargo flying and teaching in a variety of places in the U.S.
So when they
And
do,
that was simply because I couldn't afford to just fly for a hobby. I'm not rich enough.
gotcha. So when you do cargo, what size is typically a cargo plane?
So well, let's keep it discreet for this. So I'm not going to talk about the make and models that we flew because
Yeah. Yeah.
that would say where I used to work, and I'd
Yep.
just rather not because that shop owns some of this make and model. But most cargo, they like a lot of cargo operations like to use turboprops. So
Hmm.
it's turbine, but it spins a prop, not a fan. So
I
it's not a
gotcha.
jet, but it's not piston.
Hmm.
It's not naturally aspirated, but it's not totally turbine with like several stages of fans, right?
Okay.
Um, it's between suck, push, bang, blow, and like your 747 jets. And the cost of operation is a lot lower than like
Hmm.
fully turbine, like regional jets and things like that you would fly when you fly for the airlines.
Gotcha.
Uh, and I like the cargo world because you scream across the sky at night, and then the trucks, UPS, FedEx, DHL, they load up during the day and they
Hmm.
drive your packages around town so that you get your Amazons, right?
Gotcha.
Um, and flying at night is really cool. There's less traffic, just like
Hmm.
there is on the highway. And it's beautiful at night, especially in the western states where I used to live. Like flying over New Mexico at night is almost like flying over the ocean. There's a few little towns with lights, but there's not much. And the ATC is really nice to you at night because they're not as busy. So like
Hmm.
sometimes it like Albuquerque Center will even chat with you sometimes at night because they're bored. So but so yeah, a lot of turboprops. I have a type rating in a type of jet, but then when the recession hit, I could not get a job. Nobody was
Gotcha.
hiring.
I see. I
So,
see.
so I am trained in that, but I've never worked. That would have been an airline job, which never materialized. I've never worked for the airlines.
So you've done a lot. There's no doubt about it. You've been in a lot of different fields. When did you start modeling? At what age?
Oh yeah. Well, like most that found me, modeling kind of finds you, like broadcasting, you find out you have talent or not. It's
Hmm.
it's not really a job you can force. And so, like a lot of I was 14, I was in a mall in Northern California, which is not like a hub of modeling. There's a little work, but it's small time. It's not Paris or London.
Mhm.
So this guy was a photographer and owned a modeling agency, found me. I was my father. And, my father was very careful to ensure that he wasn't some creep pedophile. And I guess I got lucky because he wasn't. He was the real deal. He had an agency of models and he was a photographer. And so I started doing like small time runway stuff, junior league, Macy's in the mall, some clothing tags for San Francisco area clothing designers. But then I didn't grow. My sister's 5'11" barefoot. I capped out at 5'6". I stopped growing.
Mm.
So that was the end of the runway dreams. I'm too short. But then when I moved to LA for my MBA, I did my undergrad at Berkeley, and then I moved to LA for my MBA. And then when I was in LA, it's so common there to have a headshot and to add on a little bit of acting or modeling or broadcasting work because it's Hollywood,
Mhm.
that you see a lot of people in LA who have a main job and then they also do a little bit of entertainment of some kind.
Makes
That's
sense.
pretty common. You'll see like a lawyer who consults for a TV show so that it's accurate, or like everybody's got a headshot.
Yep.
So there was so much opportunity in like glamour, and I don't come from a shame-filled family, so I did Playboy. It wasn't nude. Playboy hasn't been nude for a long time,
Mhm.
but it was pretty close. It was pretty sexy. And I'm not sorry. I was hot and I was in my late 20s, early 30s, and I love the photos. And I even did one into my 40s, and I'm proud of those. When I'm an old lady, I'll be like, look how sexy I was. Uh,
True.
and I did all the other stuff. I did a lot of fitness, which is pretty brutal to prep for, but there's good money in that.
Mhm.
And then as I got older, toward my 40s, it starts to be more fashion and things. I've done Elle, L'Officiel, like some stuff that's more like the clothing.
Wow.
And well, there's a big genre of like more mature models of different ages,
Yep.
different races, different sizes. Because it turns out they're finding out that a lot of consumers like to see a kind of version of themselves
Yeah.
in a picture. It's
Yeah.
still an idealized version. There's still a lot of Photoshop and makeup and hair extensions, there
Of
is.
course. Of course.
But they do want to see somebody that maybe isn't just a 16-year-old, 6 foot tall, blonde white girl, right?
True.
Those
Absolutely.
are fine. They're beautiful, but that's not the only thing that's pretty, right?
Exactly.
So modeling is becoming more democratized, and I'm totally here for it.
Okay. So you pilot, model.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, while in school, and then while in I between undergrad and grad school, I worked in biotech for 2 years. So my
Okay.
undergraduate degree was in molecular biology from Berkeley. I thought I would be a scientist. Well, I thought I would go to med school before I realized I was terrible at organic chemistry.
Mhm.
So that was the end of my med school dreams. I was just too stupid. So then I thought, okay, I'll be a scientist. My father's a professor. I thought I'll do PhD and be a scientist. Well, I was not only a fairly mediocre scientist, but I actually didn't enjoy it. Studying something is not the same as doing it for a living. You know what I mean?
That's true.
And do I wish I had found that out a little earlier? Yeah, maybe. But fine, whatever. I pivoted. My undergraduate degree, I was only qualified to work in a lab. And then I found out I did not enjoy that.
Mhm.
So what did I do? I was like, oh God, like I got to pivot. So I did an MBA. And so flying and modeling, those are all hobbies. I'm making a little money off modeling. I did a pageant when I was in high school, like stuff like that. But these are around school and work.
I got you.
And then after my MBA, I did do a 9 to 5 for many, many years, and still modeled all the time. Like I still shoot every week. It can be full time for some people. It can be part time for many of us too.
Mhm.
And then the company I worked for many years after my MBA, from about, let's see, that would be 2004. It's going to be probably 4 or 3 or 5. I'd have to go back and look, but it's about 2004 to about 2009.
Mhm.
We took it public. I had stock options, set aside some money. Great recession hits. I've got enough money. I don't have to stay in that industry. I decided to fly full time. So that's how that happened.
Nice. Nice. Okay.
That's the twisty,
So
turny
we-
path, right? I just kind of picked whatever worked.
I see. I see. And that's
And-
what's interesting about your whole story.
Well,
'Cause-
and because I didn't have children or marriage, I had an extra like 12 hours a day that other people don't have.
and you had extra money too.
Well, this is what my sister says. My sister's a mom and a business owner and a wife, and sometimes I joke that, her house is full of laughter and love and light. And she says, yeah, but you have more cash and more freedom.
This is
So,
true. Yeah. So,
you know,
okay. So, how did we get to luxury escorting? How did
yeah,
that come
that.
about?
So, and I would be lying if that wasn't the engine that allowed a lot of it. So, in college, back when I told you I thought I would maybe try to go to med school before I realized I was too stupid, I did candy striping. Do you know that term?
Candy striping.
You volunteer at the hospital, and
Okay.
it's like a thing you do when you're trying to go to med school later. They call it candy striping because they used to wear striped outfits like in the 50s. Nobody
Okay.
does anymore, of course. And so I was volunteering in the emergency room, and of course, pretty freshman in college, hot chick, promptly get hit on by a guy who was finishing up med school.
Hmm.
And yeah, he was a decade older than me, but I thought he was cute. My sorority sisters thought he was an old creep, but he was only 29. He wasn't like 60, but uh wanted to date. And so I could have either dated him or I could date some frat boy who like wouldn't even take me out to dinner.
Hmm.
And yes, part of what I liked is that he was becoming a doctor and that he could do fun stuff, which was expensive. Part of what I did like was his wealth. I did very much also love him. It was
Hmm.
not just his success, but women have typically liked successful men. And I am not going to apologize for that any more than men should apologize for liking beautiful women, which, I could say, well, men don't really love women. They only like the way we look. That's not true. They like you pretty and nice.
This is true.
And I liked him successful and nice.
True.
So yeah, he was dazzling. These frat boys were not even that nice. They wouldn't even call you, and after dating you, they weren't nice. And he was like, yeah, like, you want to go to Tahiti next week? So who would you date? I dated him. And
Yeah.
so the thing about like dating men who were more successful, that also like modeling, that kind of happened organically. I had the option to because I was an attractive young woman. This typically happens, and I liked it better. Now, some women may not, but I sure did.
Hmm.
I mean, it was dazzling to go to great restaurants and operas and do cool stuff that, I didn't grow up with money. I didn't do that stuff. Uh, Meanwhile, one of my sorority sisters had been a high end companion. She told me about it in confidence. I filed it away in the back of my head, but I was like, well, I got a rich boyfriend. That's interesting that you can do that with two or three guys. Well, I'm same thing with one guy. He's footing the bill for everything. He in fact wanted me he moved me into an apartment because a guy can't spend the night in a sorority house. Most sororities don't allow men to stay the night, right? By
Yeah.
rules.
Exactly.
And he was sick of getting hotels every time he came to Berkeley.
Hmm.
So he wanted to get me an apartment, and I couldn't afford one. So he paid for it. And then I couldn't afford a car to get to his town, which was about 50 miles away.
Hmm.
So he bought me a car. So it just kind of happens, which is common. And he wasn't controlling. He wasn't mean to me. It was perfectly lovely. But he had money and I had none. So that's how it was. Uh, anyway, he and I date for years. I'm sort of, I guess, a sugar baby. I guess I never opened my wallet for like 7 years because why would I? I had no money.
Yeah.
He had all the money. And then I go to LA to do my MBA, and he and I break up. We don't make it.
Okay.
Distance, whatever. He slept with somebody else. I found out. Whatever. Uh, I wish him all the best. He's doing fine in life now. Many, many, many decades later. But we broke up. And he took back my car. I found myself broke, pretty heartbroken, wanting to. I had never dated anybody but him. I met him when I was barely 18. Uh, and I thought about what this sorority sister had told me, that she could date successful guys, one or two or three of them, and provide for herself. I wouldn't have to drop out of my MBA program, which otherwise I would have had to drop out. I couldn't
I
afford
gotcha.
anything.
Yep.
The agreement he and I had was that I would do my MBA, move back up with him, and get married. And the bottom fell out of all that when we broke up.
Yep.
So I decided I would do that. I was like, that seems like a great idea right now. Instead of one boyfriend, I'll just have a couple, and it'll be casual, no heartbreak, not too much emotion, but I'll still have some nice dates, and I'll be able to pay for my MBA
Hmm.
and be a little independent and free while I lick my wounds from this relationship ending. Perfect. Well, I couldn't find anybody who would hire me like she had told me about up in the San Francisco area. But one person told me, you don't need to work for anybody else. You can do this yourself. It's not hard. And they showed me a couple websites, and I was like, oh, this is just dating. which, this is like the early edition of like Tinder and stuff now.
Hmm.
And you just make it clear that you are broke, but they should be successful. And there are some people who like that and some people who don't, and that's fine. Uh, and so, yeah, I promptly dated a couple of very successful men for many, many years, and it was actually pretty boring. It was just dating.
So let me ask you this: what does it do to your mental toll when you start doing, or it's not really a big deal?
Well, it's a big deal because society thinks it's a big deal, and I still don't really know why. I've asked people what is so fascinating about you, and there's two things I've heard. A lot of women are fascinated because they're like, "How come I did that for free and you got thousands of dollars each time you went out to dinner?"
Hmm.
It's they wonder, "What are you doing that I'm not doing?" Now, rich wives don't wonder because they got the big bag, but they a lot of women, I think they think you're doing something really special and you're not. It's
I
just
got you.
dating. You're probably prettier. I mean, you can't date successful men if you're ugly. I'm sorry, that's just the truth. They don't tend. I mean, there's probably some somewhere who like ugly women, but that's pretty rare.
Hmm.
Uh, so you do have to be pretty, and you do have to have very good manners and be polite. But that comes naturally to me. I did cotillion. I was a debutante. I was a sorority girl. Having being polite to people is what I like anyway. It's what I prefer. If somebody proves themselves to be an asshole, I just kind of delete them from my world. Uh, I have good manners. I always lead with good manners because I just think it's easier.
Yeah.
I'm lazy in that way. I'd rather get along.
Do do
so
do some of
uh,
these
I
guys
think,
just want to just talk? Is that it?
well, no, they want to date and all. I mean, I know companions who've married their clients. Some have kids. They've been married for over a decade now. I know several, and some just wanted to date casually and never have any commitment, and that's cool too. But it's the same thing you see. The financial component is actually pretty normal for all of human history.
Hmm.
Women didn't have their own money until like women having their own major money is like the last 25 years maybe, and
Yeah.
only in a few cities in the world.
Yeah. I was just gonna say that. Yeah, that's
I mean,
true.
the powerhouse women in New York City that make more than their boyfriends, that is a complete anomaly worldwide. It's
Yeah.
wonderful. It's wonderful, but that is not the norm.
Yeah.
Everywhere in the world you go, if you don't provide a woman financials, her family won't even let her date you.
Absolutely.
Try
That's
going to
true.
the third world and dating a woman without providing income to her and her family. Good luck.
Hmm. No, no, you're right.
Family sees you as a provider, and that is normal. So, I mean, they used to tell women, like, you better find a doctor or lawyer, that whole thing. It was men were providers, and nobody was mad about that.
Hmm.
So, yeah, and wealthy men aren't mad at that. One of my exes, he said, I love it that I ice you out in Cartier and I provide you a nice apartment and car, and I love it that other men can't compete with me because I can make your life easier and safer, and they can't. He liked it. It was a flex. He was successful, and he knew that was part of what he had to offer. He wasn't mad about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
He liked it.
Okay.
No rich man cares that his woman needs. I mean, also rich men know how expensive it is to be beautiful. They've seen the bills. So
Hold that thought.
yeah.
All right. We're gonna step away for about 20 seconds. Got to pay some bills. We'll be back more with Amy Taylor.